Okay, we are back. And this guy, don't scoot over. If you're gonna scoot over, scoot this way.
Wait, scoot?
If you're gonna scoot over, scoot this way.
Scoot this way, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, we were talking about Joe Biden. This guy was wondering if Joe Biden's actually gonna make it for another 2 years, and that's a good question. I honestly don't know. He doesn't seem long for his world, and
some people just live life like that. Like FDR, to his dying day, he was working with politics and major problems of the day and stuff.
Yeah, major problems. Yeah. So you're asking about like the crimes of Joe Biden?
Yeah. Wasn't there something that had to do with the son? It happened.
Well, I don't want to really talk about his son because I'm not that familiar with it.
Okay.
And so, but you know how like he just recently started like, I think he's going to use an executive order to pardon people in federal prison specifically for marijuana.
Small cases, basically.
Yeah, something like from what I've heard, there's actually not that many people in federal court for only marijuana, and so he's not going to be pardoning that many people. However, for the people who do get pardoned, that's awesome.
Yeah.
But anyway, what's odd about that is, not odd, what's curious about that is he's part of the reason why a lot of people were locked up in the first place. Like he puts these, what was it, like the 90s, I want to say it's a 96 crime bill that he passed. And like, it's not just that, it's just any kind of like tough on crime bill. He brags about like having his name on it. And so like the 96 crime bill is the one that he specifically wrote. And so that started like this wave of like mass incarceration. Disproportionately, the people who get arrested are black people, black and brown people. And you have Kamala Harris, who was a prosecutor, and her job was to make sure these the people who got arrested, were thrown in prison.
Yeah. But what had they done though?
Well, I mean, they were committing crimes, but like a lot of these crimes were non-violent crimes.
Okay, so non-violent.
Yeah, I mean, they're playing like non-violent victims crimes that result in people being thrown in prison. And like there are people, I know some people are gonna hear this and be like, oh well, like most people in prison, especially except federal prison, are in prison for like violent offenses. Thing is, like if you like murder someone, if you rape someone, you're gonna be serving quite a long time. And if you're charged and convicted, you're gonna be serving quite a lot of time in prison. So yeah, there's gonna be like a large number of people in prison for violent crimes, but that number that they're referencing of the people who were there specifically for non-violent offenses, that's like a revolving door where like more people are getting churned through that. Do you guys see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. So essentially, like the violent criminals, they're gonna be there for a long time, whereas like the petty criminals, there's just gonna be more of them churning through that system. And back to like Joe Biden, there is like the crime bill. You can go look this up. Like I know I'm not giving that many details, but the crime bill is something you can look up on your own. Also, he helped lead us into the Iraq War, which he played. He's not. When I first heard about this, I thought when I first heard of Joe Biden's role in the Iraq War, I thought he simply just like voted yes on going to war. This guy was active and pushing for this war. He helped spread these lies. The whole like WMD, weapons of mass destruction. Yeah. Like he could have called, I'm forgetting his name, Scott Ritter. He could have called Scott Ritter. Scott Ritter, former Marine Corps. I believe he served in the Desert Storm, but I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. But anyway, he was like the head of like the weapons inspectors that like went into Iraq looking for weapons. And so he was fairly certain that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. Right. Because every time he went there, they were being very dodgy with him. They weren't letting in certain areas. They were constantly running interference. And so he was like, okay, eventually I'm going to find some like actual concrete evidence of weapons of mass destruction. Yeah. Turns out he found out that the CIA was tailing them. And like they were using the weapons inspections to find information on Saddam Hussein so they could assassinate him.
Okay.
So like that's why the Iraqis were being so dodgy with him. They're trying to prevent their boss from being killed.
Mm-hmm.
And after you realize that, it's like, oh, well, I guess that was my only evidence that there were weapons of mass destruction, and that just went out the window, you know.
Yeah.
And so they basically, Joe Biden, he could have just called up Scott Ritter. He knows the guy by name. He could have called Scott Ritter and be like, hey, can you want to show up to this, congressional meeting, and then talk about your findings about whether or not Saddam Hussein has WMDs. And instead, he called him up and called him a traitor for opposing this war. I mean,
oh my God.
Like you said before, like he does have like Joe Biden does have like this this grandpa aesthetic when he's not sniffing kids. But like in the past, like he was just so much worse. He's like really softened now, but he was just so much worse in the past.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, when he first got elected, the first thing he did was criticize Nixon for pulling out of Vietnam.
Oh, who is this?
Joe Biden.
Really?
Yeah, when he first got elected into office, the first thing he did was criticize Richard Nixon for pulling out of Vietnam.
Yeah. Well, the problem is, how was that?
It's a train, man.
So, dude, it never should have happened that way.
Yeah. Oh, and like currently right now, this is gonna be a touchy subject because there are a lot of people who just turn their brains off when this comes up. The Russia-Ukraine conflict.
Yeah.
In 2014, he was part of the coup to overthrow the previous regime and install the current regime, essentially. And like that triggered a civil war because the people in the East, they're more like they're not like super like Russia fans, but like they speak Russian, they're ethnically Russian, and they lean towards Russia a little bit.
Yeah.
And the people in like the West, they're like, I don't know if they're more Western, but like they're more friendly to the West. And so there is this conflict that was going on, and that was just greatly exacerbated by the coup. And so the people in the East, in like the Donbass region, they're saying that if they can just take over a building and call it and say they're in charge, then we can like take over our own federal buildings or government buildings, and then say that we're in charge here.
Yeah.
So that's what they did in the East, and that's when the Kiev they declared like a war on terrorism, and like started like bombing the East, and that's when the Civil War kicked off. Wow. To be fair, like I haven't really yet to find anybody talking about the war in the Ukraine or the Civil War in 2014.
Yeah.
Who can specifically say like who actually started it, you know? Because just like I said, I was saying before how they declared a war on terror and went after Eastern Ukraine that was trying to like split off or like.
I met with the Ukraine woman today.
Say again?
One of Penny's friends is named Vanya, and her mother is from Ukraine. And that's why, but...
What did you say?
To the woman?
No, like, what, you started this story with, such and such a Ukraine woman today.
Oh, I was saying that I spent some time with someone from Ukraine today.
Okay.
And you'd think how much can you stress when things are going, she just wants her family to be safe, you know?
Yeah.
It's crazy. Dude, but I'm falling asleep. We have to cut this shit. I'm sorry.
Alright, so yeah. Oh, by the way,
what?
Before people are gonna call me like a Russian bot or whatever, some bullshit like that. But
really?
There's actual evidence there's like a shit ton of evidence of the coup in 2014. There's this leaked audio of Jessica Newland. I forgot who she was talking to, but she was talking about planning the leadership of the new regime after they toppled the old regime.
Right.
And then there's Gideon Rose, who went on like national television, talked to Stephen Colbert, and started basically explaining how this coup is going to like shift Ukraine into leaning heavily towards the West, or essentially more specifically towards the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And,
I guess
they're
by
just
themselves they're kicking ass.
Hold on, let me finish.
Okay.
I mean, they're pretty much admitting to like what they did, and in that interview, he pretty much like admits that they, the U.S. Provoked this attack because when we tell Stephen Colbert what's going on, Stephen Colbert response is like, okay, but like, can't Russia send in the troops? And Gabe Rose is like, yeah, Russia can send in the troops. That's why we need to like do this while he's distracted with the Olympics.
Mm-hmm.
And like they're basically just saying like, yeah, they're going to have this violent response to what we're doing.
That's weird.
Yeah, it's
why does he want to have a war?
Why does Putin want to have a war?
Yeah.
United States is the U.S. government's an evil empire.
Mm-hmm.
It's trying to take over the world, and anybody that doesn't bend the knee, they get encircled, and the media outlets are constantly talking about how fucking evil they are, while not really talking that much about how evil our allies are, like Saudi Arabia, who crucifies the corpses of the people they executed for speaking out against the Saudi royal family.
Oh my god.
Yeah. There's all kinds of like horrible shit that Saudi Arabia has done, but like they're our allies, so like we don't really talk that much about them. I think, they killed this journalist named Khashoggi, and they killed him in like one of the most brutalist way possible. They took like hand saws and started like sawing him to pieces.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's brutal. It is a brutal dictatorship over there in Saudi Arabia, but they're our allies, and so apparently that's how America fights for freedom and democracy, by teaming up with tyrants.
Yes, they always have. They used to do that with Iran.
Yeah, they used to be friends with Iran. That's why they bring them up, because like Iran, like after the hostage crisis, like Israel and Iran were still friends.
Mm-hmm.
Man. But anyway, you see they're tired, so let's do some jamming. Let's work on some music. Yeah, we still work on music, by the way. My Twitter account is just the Taubnernaut Twitter account has been changed to be dedicated to the whole peace rally that I'm planning.
Oh, yeah.
So it'll be over. Oh yeah, peace rally, Columbus, Ohio. Let's see. Yeah. The peace rally, Columbus, Ohio, starts at noon. It's in Thurber Park. Like whenever I look at Thurber Park, it's like it says Jefferson, and in quotation marks it says Thurber Park. Like I have no idea why it does that, but when you type in like Thurber Park, the address pops up like immediately. So yeah, Thurber Park, noon, Columbus, Ohio, peace rally. There's going to be Scott Horton, main feature, as well as Misty Winston. So two people who, in a lot of ways, are like at odds with each other. I shouldn't say at odds. It kind of makes it sound like there's some hostility, but like politically speaking, they're at odds with each other. But when it comes to peace, they're willing to join hands in unity to oppose the evil empire. Oh yeah, you were talking about why Russia wants a war. Putin wants a war. Basically, the United States is like the United States has Russia surrounded, and like they kept moving NATO closer and closer to it up until like Israel's border. You know.
Okay.
So after the Soviet Union fell, they had East Germany and West Germany. They were reunited, and so like the whole of Germany became like part of NATO. But then they keep pushing it further east, where like a bunch of other countries, a bunch of other Eastern European countries became part of NATO, like Poland, for example. There's some others I can't name off the top of my head, you know. And so NATO is an offensive alliance. Don't listen to anybody's bullshit when they tell you it's a defensive alliance. It's an offensive alliance. You know, you can ask Iraq about that. You can ask Afghanistan. You can ask Libya about that. It's an offensive alliance. You know, and like it provides cover for people because if you want to start a war with one of these countries that are in NATO,
Yeah.
well, you seriously risk, the rest of NATO getting involved and fighting you, know. And so a lot of these countries, they have their own interests that they're following. They have their special operators operating in a bunch of other different countries.
Yeah.
And so they have this shield where if let's say there's some German special forces operating in your country and you don't like that, you can't just invade Germany without triggering a war, triggering NATO bombing you back.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas they can intrude on your country, and it's just difficult to have an opposite response where you intrude on them. It's a one-way street. Yeah. And so
are you laughing at me?
No, I'm not laughing at you. And so when it comes to Putin specifically, his country's being surrounded. He's having more and more countries that are working against his interests, and he has his allies. He has Belarus.
Mm-hmm.
They're one of Russia's biggest allies. I believe they're one of Russia's biggest allies.
Do they just want more land, or is there something?
Let me finish.
Perfect.
Let me finish. Okay.
What if you don't answer my question?
Let me finish. I'm trying to answer your question. Okay. Sorry for being short with you, but he asked me, he's like, "Hey, why does he want war?" But a lot of stuff, it's it's not this one singular issue. There's a bunch of other stuff that are coming together to make this an issue, and none of this justifies the war in Ukraine. Okay.
Right.
What Putin did is horribly wrong. What Putin continues to do is horribly wrong. And I'm not justifying any of this. I'm just pointing out cause and effect. All right. And so the United States has these color-coded revolutions. It's funded by this quote-unquote non-government organization called National Endowment for Democracy, or NED. But the biggest contributor to NED is the CIA.
Yeah.
So this quote-unquote non-government organizations get a bunch of CIA funding.
Yeah.
And so they fund a lot of these revolutions in a bunch of different countries and regimes that they don't particularly like. And so they're called color-coded revolutions because there's usually some type of color associated. It's not always just one color. Sometimes it was the denim revolution.
Yeah.
And so they have these revolutions all over the place. They tried to do one in Iran a while back. I think that was the Green Revolution, but I'm not sure. And they're probably doing it right now, to be honest. What's going on with Iran? There's this accused protest. I believe a woman was killed by Iranian police. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of women protesting hijabs. It's not guaranteed that CIA is involved in that, but I'd be very surprised if the CIA is not involved at all. So anyway, there was a color revolution in Belarus.
Yeah. And
so Russia sees that as another one of their allies being tried to take away from them. And then, like I said, in 2014, there was this, they had a pro-Russian, some people call him a Russian puppet. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to dispute that. Maybe he's a puppet, maybe he wasn't. I don't care. It's just that that guy was overthrown twice because he re-won an election. And he was overthrown twice in 10 years. And so in 2014, that's when it stuck. And they had a new regime. And so now Russia has once again another hostile nation on its border.
Stupid Trump is probably going to be like that.
I don't know about that. I know we're running out of time. I'm trying to make this quick. But I don't know, it's kind of hard to answer this question very quickly. But anyway, there is a strategic advantage for Russia to have access to Crimea, because that's where they have their only what do they call it? It's the only port that doesn't freeze over. So Russia, for those who don't know, is fairly far north and it's fairly cold. And there's a bunch of ports. It has a bunch of ports, but over the winter it freezes over. Mm-hmm. And so there's a strategic advantage to having that port in Sevastopol that does not freeze over. And Crimea, I believe Crimea used to belong to Russia, but just over years in history, it's changed hands. and so it was part of Ukraine at the time. And so after the Soviet Union collapsed, instead of just taking back Crimea, they just cut a deal where it's like, you Ukrainians, you own Crimea, just let us use this port. And like that deal stuck since 1991 when the Soviet Union fell, all the way up to 2014, where like after the Civil War broke out, the Ukrainians soldiers were heading toward Sevastopol to kick the Russians out, but the Russians, I think it was like Spetsnaz, which are like Russian special forces. These aren't guys you really want to tangle with. They walked outside and just like fired rounds over the heads of the Ukrainian soldiers, and like the Ukrainian soldiers got the message like, okay, we're backing off. They left. Like when they call like that Russian invasion, is basically the Russians were already there, and only 8 people died, but like they can't tie that directly to Russian soldiers. I don't know how they died, but it wasn't like Russian soldiers just shot them.
Yeah. Right. Crazy.
Yeah. So basically, it behooves Russia to either have like a friendly regime in Ukraine or to have a neutral regime in Ukraine. But what the United States did is they toppled the regime, and now like they have like a hostile regime in Ukraine, and that is not something that they like.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why. Those are the reasons essentially why Putin invaded Ukraine. Like I said, yeah, he was a piece of shit. Not justified at all, but to say this is unprovoked is childish. Yeah. All right, send your hate mail to me at Taubnernaut on Twitter. DMs are open.